What's up, y'all? Welcome to today's episode of the BeMe podcast. I'm today's host, psychiatrist Dr. Taiwo Alonge. And with us, we have a couple of phenomenal youth leaders, Meyiya Coleman and Jermal Ray. They represent their amazing selves, but also are representing a super dope Chicago-based grassroots organization called Communities United. I'm going to brag about y'all a little bit, so bear with me. Meyiya started as a youth leader at Communities United while in high school, doing organizing work to dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline and promote health-centered schools in Chicago. In 2020, she became a full-time youth organizer and healing through justice trainer. Jermal is a first-generation college student at Illinois Institute of Technology, studying architecture, hoping to design for the greater good of Chicago. He heard about Communities United through word of mouth, which is what made him join as a youth organizer, and eventually he became a youth leader. We'll talk a little bit about Communities United, but I wanted to give y'all both the chance to add anything you like. Tell us a little bit about yourselves, any hobbies, and what makes y'all you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jermal Ray, and I'm actually a business student at the Illinois Institute of Technology. I switched my major. I have a focus with architecture, so that'd be my minor. And my goal is still to design. And a couple of hobbies of mine will be basketball. I do other community work outside of Communities United, and I love just being a service to my community.
For me, I also do other work outside of Communities United. One of the organizations being a New Deal for Youth. I also do a lot of acting in the summertime. I've worked with the Black Ensemble Theater for a couple of summers, which is super dope because I love acting a lot and singing and just creating music and poetry.
Awesome. Y'all are so great. And just briefly to talk about Communities United is a survival-led racial justice organization that operates in the Northwest and South Side of Chicago. It aims to build collective power to achieve racial justice and social change. Recently, in a partnership with the psychiatry department at Lurie Children's Hospital, Communities United was one of 10 global finalists to win the Kellogg Foundation's Racial Equity 2030 Challenge, which awarded them a $1 million planning grant in 2021. And due to their success with that grant, the following year, they were one of 5 finalists awarded an additional $10 million to use over the decade to advance their Healing Through Justice initiative to support youth development, mental health, and racial equity in Chicago. And to give you all a perspective of how big a deal that is, over 1,400 organizations across the entire world applied for this grant. And they were one of 5 to win $10 million. So that's a huge deal. They're quite literally world changers. I know we got 2 world changers with us here today. I'm so excited for y'all to learn from our guests and get to meet them a little bit. So to jump us off a little bit, I would love to hear from you. When did you both start to realize that mental health was important, and what does mental health mean to you?
I would say I was at a very young age when I started to realize mental health was important. I was around 8 years old when I experienced losing my first close family member due to gun violence. And that was very devastating for my family. He was one of the pillars within the family. He was one of the ones to grab all the kids and take us to the store and give us dollars and different things like that. I think that at a young age, watching my family go through this loss and watching how the family would shift after this loss was super impactful for me at such a young age. Around that time, our community were losing a lot of people. And that was one of the well-known people in the community. He was such an amazing individual. And although he was my cousin, called him uncle. And so being 8 years old and seeing how impactful the trauma of losing him was something that I kind of thought about how a lot of other young people my age were somehow faced with this type of trauma. And even if it wasn't trauma to gun violence, it was trauma to housing and different things like that. And so at such a young age, I wanted to do something about that. And even with the loss of my cousin, I remember my mom getting me into therapy because my teachers had started to tell her that I wasn't talking much or I wasn't as focused anymore as I used to be. And so getting into therapy, I remember just never talking. The therapist would try to get me to answer questions, and the only thing that I would do is answer the questions yes or no. And when she would want me to elaborate, I wasn't really super open to elaborating because I didn't really understand my feelings at the time. But at such a young age, I realized how mental health and trauma is such a big thing in our communities, and I wanted to do something about it. I didn't know what I wanted to do about it, but I just said I wanted to change the world. That's all I used to tell my family. I want to do something very impactful. And so I realized how a lot of the different traumas that we're faced with can really have a strong impact on the way we operate in life. So I was definitely about 8 years old when I realized that it's something that we're faced with every day, whether you're young or old.
When I first realized that mental health was important, I had no exposure to like what mental health was or anything like that. But getting involved with Communities United opened my mind and my eyes to the bigger world as far as how things we see around us and how we interact, how it affects us. So I was aware of societal injustices. And it's different when you see things and you hear about the shootings and the violence and like things that are just long-term trauma inducing. But it's another when you're able to understand like, oh, I feel this way about this. And like, who can I go to for help? And that's part of the mental health journey. So I didn't have any exposure to what it was or any knowledge on it a lot at a young age. When I got involved with Communities United, that grew on me and it taught me a lot. So now I know more than I could have known within the last 3 years.
Appreciate you both sharing. I know there's so many tough things that young people have to witness. And I know both of you all have kind of mentioned the tough things that you had to witness in your communities with your family members and how that made mental health a very real thing, even when you didn't have the language for it. And it's really inspiring to kind of hear you taking that experience and shifting it to doing some really good work in your communities to help empower young people and support their mental health and kind of create healing through different systems that they might interact with, whether that's school or parks or just even community building. As a psychiatrist, more often than I would like, I have to remind my colleagues that mental health doesn't start in our clinics, in our offices, or even our hospitals, but it actually starts in people's communities. I think particularly relevant for people of color. I get the sense that everyone at Communities United knows that really well. And I'm curious what message you might have for mental health providers about the best ways to support youth mental health and how your communities and systems interact and might impact your own mental health.
I would say the message that I would share with them would be start partnering with community organizations. I think that it's very important that we think about medicine as being healing, but we never really think about how being in charge of your own healing, which means taking the action and doing the work, can also be healing. And that is something that has worked for me within this organization because I love being in charge of the change that I want to see. I love giving my personal testimony. I love basically sharing and being vulnerable with young people who are just like me and come from the same communities I come from, because it allows them to realize that they too can open up. And I think that partnering with organizations to see that let's think about healing in a different lens, not just medicine or not just evaluations, but actually having our community members be the ones who are in charge of their healing by taking action. It's something that I noticed is that Communities United for a long time, we had been partnering with Lurie Children's Hospital, which is one of the largest children's hospitals within our state or country, one of those. And with Lurie Children's Hospital, we partner with Dr. Walkup, who is in the child and adolescent medicine industry. And he is a champion in our work. And he basically has been someone who we have been able to bounce off of and create these amazing, groundbreaking ideas. And Lurie Children's Hospital and the folks over there, I can honestly say that by them partnering with Communities United, they see this whole new world of what our city can look like when it pertains to healing. And I think that is what other institutions and other clinicians and different things like that should think about. And like I said, we normally think about medicine being healing. We never really think about the action part of actually being the change and being in spaces where you see people just like you and you're able to identify that, oh, snap, I've been faced with these things as well. Let's think about how can we create a system where a community of people are also healing just by telling their stories and just by getting in a room with the legislator and talking about the resources that our communities need. And with that being said, I think I could speak for a lot of us at Communities United and say that partnering with clinicians and psychiatrists and all of these different things and other professionals has allowed us to expand our work in a whole new way.
Yes, a message to the mental health providers will be, are you listening? That's my question, because when young people go to these facilities or these institutions to get that support, they need that ear. And when you listen, it's different than when you're just hearing, because you can hear me, but if you're listening, you really focus and you can really understand what I'm telling you and how this is affecting me. So just have that open mind and be that ear for that person that's coming to you, whether it's a adult or a young adult, because it matters. And that's how you're able to do your real work. And that's what we do at Communities United. We listen and we speak out from not only what we hear, but what we see and how we can be a part of that change. So mental health is really important. And to the providers, just please listen and be open-minded to what the person is coming to you with, because it's vulnerable and it's important. And you're able to be a part of the difference in their lives when they can say, I got this off my chest and I felt like I was heard. That's really important.
They're definitely listening. And I think both of you really make really great points about how listening, not just like hearing one ear out the other, but like really listening and taking into account what people are saying to you make a really big difference. And then what you were talking about with community and institutional partnerships, I think that's so huge. In many respects, I think it's the future of the work, because these things are not kind of super individualistic experiences, but more collective. And if you work with communities, you can actually take care of people and heal communities really in a very unique and powerful way. So thank you for sharing that. I think the work that you all are doing with Laurie Children's Hospital and what you're doing with Dr. Walkup sounds amazing. And a couple of years ago, I actually got to talk with Jennifer and Raul from Communities United, and them both being executive directors of the OR. They had so much to say about the amazing work you guys do in Chicago. A lot of what came up in our conversations was addressing the root cause of problems, not just looking at the symptoms, but the actual root cause of what's actually causing people to be in distress, what's causing the trauma, what's causing the mental illness. And I'm curious what you all might recognize as some of the root causes of mental health challenges that teens specifically and young people might face, and what are ways we could begin to address them?
I would say a lot of the causes would be the lack of responsibility that a lot of our adults who we are around have. I think that having a trusted adult to listen to, having someone actually be able to go to is very important. It doesn't matter if you ask a young person something as simple as, what did you eat today? That starts off a conversation and that builds a relationship. Accountability when it pertains to, did I ask all that needed to be asked? Did I take the time out to listen to this young person when they needed to be heard? A lot of the times our young people are moving to substances and different things like that just because there's a cry out for help and no one is realizing this. A lot of our young people are faced with a lot of different traumas, whether that's traumas in the house, traumas in the community, traumas in different institutions that they are in, whether that's school, juvenile justice systems, all of these different things. I think that a lot of the time, young people are trying to cry out for help. And even if they're not saying it, or we're not saying it with our mouths, we're saying it in other ways. And I think something that I think about a lot is when I was a young person and I was faced with a lot of different things, and whether that was at home or in the community, I would just work. I would work a lot. I would go to work so much that there would be times that I was literally spending the night at the office just to get away from the community because of all of the things that were going on within the community, or just to get a break from home and all of those different things. And I started to notice now that I'm older, that wasn't healthy thing to do. I can also agree with a lot of the young people who have used alcohol to heal or to mask different things, or they think that it's healing. Because I too have gone to go and get a drink because I was simply just going through something, or I lost someone in my family. I remember smoking. I was a smoker. And I remember doing these things because I thought that it was masking what I was feeling. But the whole time, it was only numbing the pain just for a minute. And I would still have to be sober and really experience these things. And no, I didn't have a issue with abusing the alcohol or the weed, but I did indulge in these things whenever I would be going through something. And I think that is what a lot of our young people are doing. And I'm not going to say I think, I'm going to say I know. That's what a lot of our young people are doing. And being a youth organizer myself, I'm able to not only get vulnerable with young people and let them know that, hey, I've experienced this too. Let's talk about it. Something that a lot of our adults should start doing as well is really thinking about what are the root causes to these issues, because young people aren't just indulging in substances and indulging in other things just to do it. Something is going on at home, and if you take the time to listen, you never know what you'll find out. And like I said, it can be just something as simple as, what did you eat today? Or how many siblings do you have? Or how are you feeling today? What's your weather? Things like that. And I think that lets us know a lot about how can we continue to create those spaces for young people.
I would say one of the root causes of mental health, it comes with identity. It comes with knowing self, but it's also an intersection with how are you treating yourself. So yes, you have a name. That's what you were born with. But we find different purposes within ourselves, and we don't know how to really approach life. So we find these different hobbies to see like what we're good at and what we're meant to do. But sometimes it leads down the wrong road. And I feel like when we collectively get together and we build community, that's part of the change that we can see when we know like, hey, oh, that person is down the street from me. Because when we talk about root cause of mental health, it's also about who do you know in your community? Are we connected or are we disconnected? And I think that's part of the root cause, is being disconnected from not only our communities, but from ourselves. And it's within a mindset as well, knowing that how are you feeling? So are you connected with how you feel? Do you really understand what you're going through? And what do you do to say, hey, this is how I feel. This is what I'm going through. How can I get to a better point? And some of the ways to address will be being a neighbor to someone else. I say that because when you ask other people questions, you get to know more about who you are in a way. It's not really a mirror thing, but it's like having a different insight when it's like, hey, how are you doing today? Then you're like, oh, how am I feeling today? Because then you start to build this conversation. Like Meyiya said, you really build a relationship with someone else. So building relationships is definitely a way to address mental health challenges, and also taking care of yourself, understanding like who you are. You don't have to have the definite answer, but it could be something like, oh, this is what I like to do. Let me go to the park and see if I can be a mentor to younger kids. And that's how we really face what we're going through internally and externally.
I think both of you speak to kind of this experience of feeling like alone or isolated sometimes, and how that can really make mental health feel so much worse. And yeah, you talk about folks sometimes going to substances to cope, and really it's a cry for help. And Jermal, I think what you said is really beautiful in terms of the importance of connectivity, being genuine, being honest. If you're experiencing something tough, sharing it with somebody can go a long way, because they might be experiencing it too. And sometimes there's just that relief knowing that you're not alone in it. And obviously with root causes, thinking a lot about what resources are available, where are resources going to. I know at Communities United, you do so much work thinking about like the school to prison pipeline, thinking about affordable housing, thinking about survival and things of that nature. And we'll get into that a little bit. But I think related to all of that and root causes, health equity is a major part of what Communities United is about. And a lot of what your grant is about is that as well. And for Black and brown folks, queer folks, people with disabilities, and really all intersections of identity where young people can be minoritized. I'm curious, what are some of your thoughts about how we as a society can achieve mental health and racial equity? It's like a big question, but I'm sure you both have a lot of ideas.
So yeah, the way that I would answer that question is simply thinking about how do we as a community of people identify those issues within our community to kind of look at how do we create a healing center community, a healing center neighborhood, society, and how do we hold ourselves accountable in creating that space for each other. I think that it's very important to realize that we as a community need to start finding where does all of these things kind of intersect with each other when it pertains to immigration, housing, youth, violence, basically equitable change within our communities. How do we kind of find those balances and those intersections between the work? And I think Communities United, we have done a great job at kind of connecting that, whether it's our folks from immigration who are working in housing and what it looks like to have a space for folks who are immigrants to get that sense of a part of the community. I have housing, able to go home to a home cooked meal and actually go to a place where they live, or whether that's our folks who are in our communities and who are trying to create that change of, I don't want to have my children go to school and see violence all the time. All of those different things are ways that we can start thinking about how do we create that space in that healing center community that we want to see.
Yes, I want to branch off a little bit of what you said. It starts with building community. That's how we approach the mental health and racial equity. When we see each other, some people may just see skin, some people may see behavior, some people may see a stereotype, and that's not what it's about. It's about who you are within the inside, and that's what makes you a person. It's not about what you look like, what you wear, where you come from. And building off the different work that we do in Communities United with immigration and stuff, it's a lot of things going on right now in our city today. And when we talk about mental health and racial equity, are we inviting others in our communities? Are we being a neighbor to one another? Those are the questions that we have to ask ourselves. And then that's what we need to start doing to build off of breaking down the barriers from mental health and like racial inequities, as far as how we think about each other, how we feel about each other, and what we can do to help one another. That's part of the solution. And I think building off what Meyiya said is, she broke it down really well, but being a neighbor to one another, that's where we start. And it's about how we're inviting others and how we're treating ourselves, but each other as well. Because mental health, it's about how we're mentally approaching our lives. And racial equity, how are we basically breaking down these barriers that are against us, people of color, and in general, as far as systemic racism. So that's where we start. Being a neighbor to one another, building community, and seeing beyond the outside. We have to look in the inside. We have to really just build and get to know each other, because that's how we change.
I think I want to add one more thing. When I think about that question as well, I think about when it pertains to intergenerational work. I think that sometimes often we see either it's the young people doing it or it's adults doing it. But the reality is neither one of our groups will ever get to a place of change unless we do it together. I think that adults can learn a lot about the new generation of young people because we have so much to say and we're not afraid to say it. We have allowed ourselves to break the barriers and we've allowed ourselves to go beyond and really dig deep. And I think that is something that a lot of the times when folks were doing the work before were lacking. There were not enough questions asked and there was not enough intergenerational work. And we at Communities United do that a lot, where we have our intergenerational work going on and we do the work intergenerationally. And I think that's very important. And I think that's what a lot of organizations and different things like that need to start doing, thinking about what does it look like for us to create spaces intergenerationally where both our adults and our young people are coming together and creating this large, groundbreaking powerhouse. So I just wanted to add that as well.
You both talk a lot about being a neighbor, you talk about creating healing center communities, and you talk about intergenerational work. And, Communities United represents all of that. It's a great neighbor in Chicago that is intergenerational in terms of who makes it up. And then obviously It's creating healing and kind of seeking justice through healing. I'd love to think a little bit more about Communities United specifically. And I know both of you have been there for at least a couple of years, if not longer. And there's so many great initiatives, Voices of Youth of Chicago Education, Survivors' Rights, just to name a few. I'd love to hear a little bit about some of those initiatives, as well as what roles you guys have in Communities United specifically.
So I have been Communities United for about 10 years. I started when I was a sophomore in high school, started to do volunteering, actually. I was actually drugged here by my grandmother. I literally had come with her to a meeting once about police accountability. And as I sat in the meeting, I'm like, oh my God, this is some amazing work. I want to get involved, but there's also school and all of those things. And so I just was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to come here aside from my family coming, because not even only my grandmother was coming. I had my mom and all of those different things. I had my cousins, and all of them were also a part of activism and all of that stuff. And so coming here as a volunteer and slowly getting used to the work and going to Springfield and advocating for change and resources, it was amazing to me. And I got the chance to really see what it was like on the other side of the fence to actually do the work, get, the change I wanted to see within my community and my school. And so I actually did move into interning, where I was able to work with other young people. And I'm this 16-year-old, and I have like a 16-year-old young person that's my youth, and I'm training them. And that was amazing to me. And then I moved on to becoming a full-time organizer, where I am the youth Healing Through Justice youth trainer. And so able to realize that, wow, I've been here for a long time, and I've seen all of these different young people, and I've met all of these beautiful individuals. So yeah, I've definitely been here for a long time, and I've traveled through the whole pipeline of Communities United.
So my role in Communities United is I'm a youth leader, and I've been a part of Communities United for 3 years now. Being involved within Communities United has been a big part of who I am today. I want to touch on our Boys and Young Men of Color work, which is a part of Communities United, where I participated in a mental health report. Me and a group of other young men went out in our communities to survey, interview, and participate in focus group for accurate research data, which was approved by the institutional review boards. This was an amazing research project, which allowed a lot of young men's voices to be heard and be part of the work voluntarily. Continuing on with more work, such as being part of different conferences, meetings, and doing things like podcasts, which I'm so excited about. It's just been a breakthrough in my life, and it's been a huge part of who I am.
Both of y'all's journeys through Community United is so awesome. And yeah, I mean, it's really awesome to have you both with us. Kind of thinking a little bit about what I discussed in the intro with Healing Through Justice, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the partnership with Laurie Children's Hospital, which I know Meyiya brought up a little bit earlier. And what does that look like? And also thinking about the grant y'all won. And I'm curious what things Communities United and Healing Through Justice has cooking up for us in the short term and the long term as they participate in the Racial Health Equity Challenge for 2030.
We have been working with Laurie Children's for quite some time now. Couple years to be exact. Even before I was even a young person, they were in the works of working with Communities United. And so some of the things that we have been doing with Laurie Children's Hospital has been partnering with them on the Kellogg work and what that looks like for our communities. And when it pertains to working with clinicians and different things like that, like I said before, we're working with Dr. Walkup, who has been a champion, and we've been doing at Communities United when it pertains to our Healing Through Justice model and the framework. And that has been something in itself, partnering with them with our Working on Knowledge and Equity project when it comes to evaluation and what that looks like for us to actually get our equity work within the school partnership within Communities United. And so a lot of the different work that we at Communities United do as far as our Healing Through Justice framework Lurie Children's Hospital has been a part of, and it's been groundbreaking work. And so, like I said, Dr. Walkup has been a huge champion and what that looks like and really spreading the message too. This is something that is life-changing work, and it works, and it's not medicine. Basically, our action is our healing. This is what we do to actually create spaces. We talk about these challenging things that, you don't normally find in school or a doctor's office and all of those different things. And that is something that Lurie Children's Hospital has been able to help us convey to a lot of the systems that we're trying to get our healing through justice framework model and things like that in. And so those are just some of the things that we've done with Lurie Children's, and I can't wait to see what happens in the future. Hopefully we can get this model in different places. And when I talk about the healing through justice model, it's really just basically realizing a purpose beyond self. And you go through these 3 phases. You have phase 1 where you probably know about trauma, but you don't really know exactly what it is and how to identify it. So you're in these meetings where folks are talking about trauma, they're talking about their things, and maybe you didn't quite share anything you're going through at the moment. But then you have phase 2 where you're recognizing trauma, you're recognizing conversations that are held, you're in group and you're sharing and you're basically able to identify, I went through this as well, and here is my story. And then you have phase 3 where, oh snap, I'm not the only one going through this. There's millions of other people across the city, across the country, the state that are also experiencing these same types of traumas. What could I do to be in community with them and take action to make sure that we get resources? And that's that realizing purpose beyond self. I am who I say I am. And that is what Lurie Children's Hospital have, helped us convey, that this is our healing. Spreading a message and being in community is we use to heal as an organization. And that is something that we as a community, as a state, all of those things need to start working on, because it's amazing work. And so those are just some of the things. And I think Jermal can talk about a little bit of his experience and what he's done so far within the work.
Yes. So when I got into Community United, I actually started straight with Lurie Children's Hospital. It was more work with them as far as with the report and different meetings and conferences that I was a part of, going to the hospital. And we have the GLC Gathering of Communities at Lurie's. It's really a great experience when you have an institution that provides service to a different variety of groups, and you're able to come in and speak to like city, state officials that are making plans for the city, making plans for the state in which you live in, and you're able to voice what you want to see change and voice what you're collaborating with other members of the organization, which is Communities United, to see the change that you're advocating for. And with what I do, like collaborating, networking, being able to just uplift my voice with so much as far as being a part of these meetings and just showing up for myself and for others who aren't even here anymore due to just the inconveniences of life. And I wanted to speak on like the grant as far as receiving that and like how I felt during that moment. It was a surprise because we were all called to this space as far as like, it's like a venue, but we were all called to come to a space so we can like have a meeting. But that wasn't the case. It was actually a big surprise. And the surprise was the result of the contest we were in for the work that we do. And when I heard the news, I was like, wow. And then I got straight into a video about my reaction. And it was just so dope because that's what you do. When you do the work and you have people sitting next to the side of you who's been doing longer than you, the way it impacts you matters. And that's what we went into. So I was just excited. I was ecstatic about being able to receive that monetary award to push for so much that's ahead of us. Technology is evolving The youth are changing. We are getting older and younger at the same time. And that's kind of funny. So it was just a big surprise, but it's just dope to continue to lead on from people who were before you.
Yeah, I think I saw the video on y'all's website, and it's so awesome to see how excited you guys were. Just again, the work you've been doing for so many years, both individually but as an organization, is so amazing. I mean, Jermal, you talking about doing the work for people who were there at one point and maybe not there anymore, and kind of continuing that legacy, I think is just so awesome. And, with Communities United, there's so much that people can find out about it on the website, but I'm really curious what things you think people wouldn't understand about Communities United that you might want to take a second to be able to explain to our listeners and to teenagers and folks who might want to think about modeling a youth organization or a social justice organization in their cities or in their communities like Communities United, and what that might take.
I think I would say family oriented. That is something that you can see a little bit on there. Definitely doesn't show the full blown, we're a family. We operate as a family. It's always a great time when we're doing the work. We're always very open to just getting the job done. And it's not really work for us. Our lives, we're able to connect with our community members. We're able to really build these amazing relationships, not only amongst each other, but amongst our communities. And I think that the website doesn't show enough of that. I think that something else I would say is we are so determined to change the world around us. And our leaders are amazing leaders. They come from the community. Some of them have been there for longer than I have, and then their kids come there and their kids come there. So it's definitely a family of people, and we're able to bounce ideas off of each other. You have from down to Miss Roxanne, who is like the auntie of the organization, or Miss Electa, who's like the grandmother of the organization, who just a lot of family feel and family oriented things that happen within our organization. I think that that's something that you need because it feels like home. And that's something that I think that people wouldn't just be able to get from the website. I think you have to actually come in person to really see that we are a family.
I would say what you will not get on the website is what you will get in person, which is the history. So the history, the timeline of history is something that you will not get on the website. That is so important because just like Meyiya said, you have the grandmother organization or the auntie organization or however you put it as far as age, but it's important to know where it started from. And it did not start from the top. It didn't start from the top. It started from the bottom. And it started from a time where everything wasn't like it was now. And I think that's important when you talk about history, when you talk about a community organization that is family oriented. It's family oriented in our perspective, but we're really about the work, honestly. We're really about helping the people of different communities and going internationally. This is something that will continue to occur in the world change. That's something that we will always need. And Communities United has a representation of so much that you won't be able to see on the website. And once you step foot in that meeting or in the office, you'll be like, wow, okay, so this is what we're working with. But on the website, this is what I see. And it's totally different. And you get a different atmosphere. So yeah, it's just very important. To build on with the second part of the question, I would say, if you want to get involved with the work, just show up. It's really important of how you feel about what you see, what you're experiencing, and how it's affecting you. So if you're thinking like, dang, I'm going through this, what can I do to change that? What newsletter you're part of? Are you part of any newsletter? I'm part of the Lyrics Children newsletter. I'm part of the Chicago Tribune newsletter. I'm in newspapers. I'm a part of so much as far as getting information. And that information can lead you to where you can put your foot down at. And that's what I did. A lot of research, a lot of just wanting to find out information. That hunger to help will definitely lead you. And I think that's what it did for me because I've always knew I wanted to help people. I wanted to serve my community and do the good work. So that's what I would say. Just show up and do exactly how you feel you need to do.
Yeah, you're talking about literally generations of families being part of Communities United. And Jermal, you talking a lot about just how the history is just such, it kind of like hits you in the face when you walk in and you feel it, it's palpable. I think that's so awesome. And I think it could be useful for us to talk a little bit about social justice and culture just a bit. Chicago has such a strong and iconic history of social justice and activism, the legacy that you guys get to carry on. I think about people like Fred Hampton. I think about people like Ida B. Wells and people groups like the Black Panther Party or the Rainbow Coalition, just to name some examples. And now obviously Communities United. I'd love to hear from you if you all have some inspirations or icons, whether that be people, groups in the past or present, pieces of art, film, or books or essays that you love that have moved you and inspire you in the work that you're doing today.
For me, my mom and my grandmother, simply because my grandmother was shot in the head. I wasn't even thought of when this happened. And to see the strong woman that she is and being able to tell her story, from telling it to 50 people, to 100 people, to 25, those different things, and hearing all of the things she had been through before she was even considered my grandmother is something that's very amazing to me. And it has allowed me to be able to stand in front of people and say, I went through this, I've gone through this, and getting through it still, and you can too, is something that is very powerful to me. And the fact that she has done that for many years and I'm able to carry that baton is something that I am so honored to do as her granddaughter. I would say my mom, simply because the skills that I've learned from Communities United have made me be able to actually get to know my mom on a deeper level. Sometimes we're like, oh, that's just my mom. But no, I learned my mom as, this is not just my mom. This is also a person. And she's also been through things. And she's also been faced with trials and tribulations and all of these different things that you never really think to ask your parents. Even if that's something as simple as, Mom, what is your favorite food? Or sometimes we don't even be knowing our mom's ages. And we're like, wait, you what? You 33? You 32? And it's crazy. Like, you never really think to ask your parents these questions and talk to them about uncomfortable conversations. But the fact that I've learned these skills from Communities United have allowed me to be able to hold these conversations and hold these spaces with my mom, where I've found out a lot about her life, and to see that she was still able to carry out raising 4 children and taking care of household and all of these different things, all while still being faced with depression and sickness and all of these different things, is such an inspiration to me. And I can't wait to make both of these women proud, because they allow me to realize that I have the strength to go through things and I have the wisdom to get through them. And so it's really amazing, and they inspire me every day. And even though my grandmother isn't here anymore, I still get inspired by the many things that I still find out about her. And I'm continuing the legacy that she has placed for me to continue in her absence. So those are the people that inspire me. And I know sometimes we say celebrities, but in my eyes, those are 2 celebrities and 2 amazing women.
For me, it's my faith, and it's my mother as well. My mother, now single mother, household of 6. I'm the oldest of 5, and then it's just my mother. So that is my inspiration, but also the untold stories. The reason why I say that is because when you think about like how many people have gone through a lot, or how many people who have stories but are unable to tell them, that's like, dang, let me be the voice that allow other people to be able to have that inspiration to speak up, because so many people are lost but not forgotten. We lost a lot of lives, but that inspires me, because even though it's a tragedy that so many lives are young lives too, it's like those untold stories is what inspires me to tell my story. Those untold stories is what inspires me to keep on pushing, to keep on moving forward. And I find beauty in that. I find strength in that. And yeah, so my mother, of course, my faith, of course, and the untold stories.
Always big shout out to the moms. Meyiya, I know you mentioned wanting to make them proud. I know they're both so proud of you, and same for you, Jermal. You both do such amazing work. Obviously, thinking about the world that we're living in, both domestically, abroad, within our communities, there's so much that happens, and it can take a real toll on people, just all the injustice, and it can make people feel really hopeless and down. And we talk about root causes of mental health. It can make people feel really depressed. I know many of our listeners, teens, children, adults, families might be feeling some level of despair given the things that they're experiencing in their communities or seeing on the news. And I've always learned to counteract some of that despair by being in community and rather than isolating, starting to organize. And you both do that so well. I would love to hear what advice you might give to teens who might want to get involved in some justice work, but don't know where to start.
The advice that I would give to teens who want to get involved in this work is simply don't think that you have to start so big. We have Google, we have the internet, and it is literally our best friends. We have TikTok and all of that different stuff. And there's so many resources out there that the internet allows us to see that we couldn't see when our ancestors actually couldn't see because they didn't have the internet and all of those different things. So I would say one day when you just simply scrolling through the internet, look for some places that are community organizations and understand that you have value. And when you think about your value and what are your values and what do you see yourself doing and the legacy that you want to uphold, really think about if that organization or that community of folks are for you. And put the internet literally to use. We have it, it's there. Start searching different non-for-profits and all of those different things. And if you need to, come to Communities United. Like, we're doing some amazing work. Young people are really thriving and striving to be great. And I think that understanding that if an organization isn't meeting you where you're at, then there's plenty more out here. And that's okay. That organization just isn't for you. But it starts small. Even organizing something within your school. You see trash around, get 2 or 3 students and you all go and grab the trash from around the school, because at the end of the day, going back to mental health, you want to have a place where you get to feel safe and you get to feel like you're able to feel comfortable. And if you can get those 2 to 3 students who also want that feeling, who also enjoy to have a great, comfortable space to go to, you all go around the school and pick up trash or organize something where you can put a proposal together and go to your principal and say, hey, we would like a mural inside of the school on the lockers, and here's why, and here's how it'll help our mental health. Those little things and little nuggets of desire to want change are the simple things that Communities United use just to even start Communities United. Because before leaving Communities United, it was literally the Albany Park Neighborhood Council, where it was about 3 people that started doing the work. And we are expanded. And because of grant that we won, we're able to expand and get 50 more Meyias and 50 more Jermals and all of those different folks who would love to do the work. And so even if you have to start small, remember that as long as you started, that's fine, you know? That's the advice that I would like to give young people who would like to get into the work of social justice and justice reform and all of those different things.
I want to start off and say this quote that I've told myself: change happens when you start. So if you want to get involved, all you have to do is start. All you have to do, like Meyiya said, you can do some research or whatnot, like I've previously done, or you can start your own group or movement. However, there's a lot of different ways to get involved, and you don't have to get involved by getting involved with something that's already started. You can get involved with something that hasn't even been thought of, and you just started it, because change happens when you start. And another thing I will say is it starts with you. You matter. You're important. You are enough. So with that being said, only you can control what you do. So if you want to get involved, go and do it. Go and be that person that you want to be as far as advocating for the change that you want to see and the change and bettering yourself into who you are. What you can do is a part of you. You can do a lot, and only you will know what you can do. So that's what I would say. Just get involved. It starts with you, and change happens when you start.
Yeah, I love the quote, Jermal. And yeah, I like the perspective of both of you kind of just saying, just start. And it's not about trying to do something big on the first attempt. You could be starting with 1 or 2 people. I think a lot of people, when they think about being an organizer, they think about having to lead mass movements or million-man marches. And, an organization could be 2 people. And it sounds like Communities United started like that too, with just a few people and slowly started to build. So I think that's really inspiring. And I hope young people listening who might be finding themselves having a hard time thinking about how to handle different kinds of injustices they might be seeing, feel inspired by both of what you said. And then related to my last question, obviously justice work can be really difficult, and organizers, activists, and seekers of change, it can leave you very vulnerable because you're witnessing a lot of really tough things that might take some time to get better or really just kind of move very slowly. I'm wondering how you both take care of yourselves and your mental health, both individually and collectively, as it relates to the very tough work that you do.
I actually take care of myself by praying. I'm a believer, Christ. And then aside to that, I play basketball. Once I got introduced to wrestling, sports have always been a part of my life, but wrestling has changed my life. It just changed my perspective of battles. When you lift someone else up, it's like, dang, is this person heavy or are they light? Because you really don't know, because you're doing it all and it gets really easy. And that's how I started to take care of my mental health, is by taking things one day at a time. So I pray, I play basketball or other sports, talking to other people. That's something that allows me to share who I am or share what I do, and then get to know someone else and how I can be a friend to somebody else. And then one last thing is by being comfortable with the uncomfortable. So I know that sounds a little tricky, but when you're comfortable with being uncomfortable, you're able to adjust and find yourself in different circumstances and being able to handle it differently. And that's a way of taking care of your mental health, is by going to the challenges instead of running away from it. And I'm comfortable with being uncomfortable. I'm comfortable with having challenges and knowing that I can get through it. So that's my way.
Definitely. Sounds like you both have really awesome and positive outlets to help take care of yourselves. Yeah, I love what you said about making sure that you have a full cup, because you can't pour an empty cup into someone else. So much of the work that you all do requires to give a lot of yourselves, and sometimes to have delayed gratification or pour a lot of work and energy into something that doesn't kind of lead to the result you want. So it's really important to be able to take care of yourselves. And I think, what you both do sounds really beautiful. I know we talked about a lot today. And the last thing I wanted to ask you all before you go is if there's any advice or thoughts or wishes you want to send out to teen listeners, and also any people you want to shout out as well, because I know you'll have some people that you care about listening to this, and want to give you both the moment to be able to do that.
My advice to the young people, including myself, would be to just show up. You are you, and you showing up can make a difference into your goals or what you want to do in life, whether it's join that basketball team, show up to the practices, showing up to other games, seeing how the game works, or wanting to shadow high schools. If you want to go to high school, showing up. And some shout outs would be, shout out to my mother, shout out to my family, shout out to friends, shout out to supporters, shout out to my coaches. Y'all will forever be my coaches, even though I'm not wrestling anymore, but I'm going to get back into it. And then shout out to my faith, because that's why I'm here. And yeah, that's it.
Big shout outs all around. You heard them. Kids, young folks, pull up, show up. Meyiya, Jermal, it's been such an honor and pleasure to be in community with both of y'all today. Just being able to share and bask in your presence. You can learn more about Communities United at communitiesunited.org. Until next time, this is Dr. Taiwo Longe, along with our podcast producer, Derek, reminding you to keep being you. Peace.